What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tin Invest. The time is now investing, where I'm your host, Jimmy Bishrat. On this channel, you could come to expect pretty much a good overall breakdown of a company that you're considering investing in. I try to do my best to give my perspective on how I see this company moving forward into the future. I try to talk about some basic risks that may affect the company, talk about their competition, threats, as well as try to touch on the financials of the company we're talking about. But in this video, I'm not talking about a company. Instead, we're going to be talking about the Series 65 exam, a test that I recently took and passed. So I figured it'd be a good opportunity to talk about what the test basically tests you on, as well as talk about what I did to pass the exam. So first and foremost, what is the Series 65 exam? The Series 65 exam is also known as the Uniform Investment Advisor Law Examination. It qualifies individuals to provide investing and general financial advice to clients. In other words, it gives an individual the right to work as an investment advisor representative under an investment advisory firm. The Series 65 exam is closed book, and it will cost you $187 to take it. The examination is administered by FINRA, and if you are an individual signing up, then you basically apply going through FINRA and then schedule the exam through Prometric, and you will likely end up taking the exam at a Prometric testing center. I promise you this process will make a lot more sense once you get started and actually try signing up for the exam. So now after you're all signed up, what does the exam look like? Is it an essay format? Is it multiple choice? Is it super long, super short? What could you come to expect from this test? Well, taken straight from FINRA.com, they claim that the exam consists of 130 scored questions. Candidates will have 180 minutes to complete the exam, and in order for a candidate to pass the Series 65 exam, she must correctly answer at least 94 of the 130 scored questions. So basically, you're given 3 hours and you must score over a 72%. But what's weird about the exam is even though you're scored on 130 questions, you're given 140 questions. To my understanding, the added 10 questions are used by the test makers to essentially test out new potential exam questions. But the thing is, you have no idea which questions those are when you're taking the exam. So really imagine that you have 3 hours for 140 questions and only 130 of those are actually scored. But don't let the amount of time you have or the total amount of questions intimidate you. Really, if you're prepared for this test and you know the content that you're going to be tested on, then it's more than enough time to answer the questions. So let's imagine you're all signed up for the test, you're ready to begin studying. What should you expect to see on this exam? The Series 65 exam is broken down into 4 parts. The first part being economic factors and business information. This part accounts for 15% of the exam, or 20 questions. In this part of the exam, you should expect to see questions about basic economic concepts, such as a comparison of the business cycles and economic indicators that cause these cycles to occur, as well as basic inflation and deflation concepts. In part 1, you'll also be tested on financial reporting, things like income statements, cash flows, and how to read them and whatnot, as well as basic accounting fundamentals such as accrual versus cash basis. You're going to also need to know about the different ratios and basic risk-reward valuation methods. And lastly, for part 1, you'll need to be able to decipher all the different types of risk and how they correlate to an individual. Now, I know I'm being very broad with my explanation, but if I were to get all in depth in this is going to end up being a 10-hour video, which I know none of us want. Okay, so that's part 1 of the exam, 15% of the test. What's next? Next, you have part 2. The next section focuses on investment vehicle characteristics. This part accounts for 25% of the test, or 32 total questions. In part 2, really what you're going to be learning about are the different characteristics and all the different types of investment vehicles that there really are. You'll need to know about all the different types of money market instruments, fixed income instruments like bonds, municipals, and so on. You'll need to know the different types of equity securities, such as common versus preferred stocks versus employee versus restricted stocks. But that's not it. You'll need to know about all the different types of preferred stocks, all the different type of employee stock options, and so on. I really meant it when I said this test is broad. In part 2, you'll also be tested on different pooled investments, such as mutual funds and ETFs and whatnot. You'll be tested on knowing about derivatives, aka options, and you will be tested on knowing the different valuation methods for some of these investment vehicles. Now, I am by no means doing this part any justice, but really what you need to know is about each individual investment vehicle and what characteristics correlate to that vehicle, because you will be tested on just different little things, and the test will do its best to try to trick you to picking the other option. And I'll be sure to do my best to explain that shortly. Okay, so that's part 2 of the exam. What should you expect from part 3? This part is labeled as client investment recommendations and strategies. Now, this section accounts for about 30% of the test, or 39 questions. It focuses more on the individual's needs and risk assessment for different scenarios that the test makers will come up with. Then you will be essentially asked to apply different portfolio strategies to these said individuals. This part will include information on the different types of clients and account needs, such as the different business entities, like a basic LLC versus a C Corp versus an S Corp, and so on. You'll need to know all the different characteristics of retirement funds, college funds, trust, wills, and so on. This part is so broad that you will be also obligated to learn about the different roles of a broker-dealer, custodians, what a market maker is, and the exchanges, as well as knowing the different trading terminology, such as bids, offers, quotes, a market order versus a limit order versus a stop order, what a short sale is, cash versus margin accounts, a principal or an agency trade, and so on. I really hope I am getting my point across that this test is broad. And the thing is, there's still a whole nother part to go along with this test. And that's part 4. This section talks about the laws, regulations, and guidelines, including the prohibition on unethical business practices. This section of the test is equally weighted to part 3, which was 30% of the test, or 39 questions. And just in case I may be throwing you off by the way I'm explaining and breaking down this exam, it's not set up as part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 when you're taking it. It's all mixed up. You can get a test question from part 1, then from part 4, then from part 3, then from part 1. Yeah, you get my point. It's just a complete randomized exam. Okay, so part 4. From my perspective, this part was really just a whole lot of memorization and understanding the differences in roles between a broker-dealer, what a market maker is, the difference between an RIA and an IA, and really understanding how they all work together. But to make things even more complicated, this part of the exam will make sure that you understand all the different rules and laws and certain exemptions that these roles may have. And you'll need to know the differences between a state versus a federally registered and why an IA would need to register federally or not. You'll really need to understand the role of a fiduciary and the ethical guidelines that must be followed. Which really this test will do its possible best to get you confused and mixed up on. For instance, you could expect questions that look like this. A client of yours is in the 25% tax bracket and has 2 kids, $1 million house, and owns his own business. He's interested in creating income. What would be the best method? A, preferred stock, B, corporate bonds, C, municipal bonds, or D, treasury bonds. Now, if you guessed municipal, then you're correct. But why? They all create income. Well, the exam wants you to be able to recognize that the client is in the high tax bracket and municipal bonds are tax deferred on a federal level. So that makes it the best overall choice for this client. See, this test isn't completely black or white, and you're really gonna need to know the content that you're being tested on. That way you'll know what the best possible choice is. Among that, the test is gonna do its absolute best to really try to manipulate the wording and trick you when you're making your choice. Put it this way, Kaplan's test bank has over 4,000 questions. So all this information can be manipulated into 4,000 various questions, and you're only tested on about 3% of them. So really the point I'm trying to make and what I want to come across to you is don't think you can get away with just using basic memorization. This test isn't a permit test, and they are going to test you on really everything and make sure that you have a solid grasp on the content that you're being tested on. So really what you're gonna need to do is open up a book and teach yourself step by step. But the thing is, if you're anything like me, I can't learn from just opening a textbook and teaching myself. That's just never been how I am. I don't know. I can't learn like that. So I tried using a company called Varsity Tutors, which essentially guaranteed me to pass or else I might get my money back. Long story short, they overpromised and underperformed, and getting my money back, I mean, it wouldn't have been possible unless I involved my credit card company. So I didn't have the best experience with them. I ended up failing the first time I did take the exam. I mean, 3 days before my test, I met with one of their own tutors, and he pretty much told me, hey, you're kind of screwed. Like, the best thing you could do is try practice test on Kaplan, maybe making some flashcards and see if you get lucky. And I mean, that's what I did. I made stacks and stacks and stacks of flashcards, and still it wasn't enough. Like I said, memorization is not gonna be the way you pass this test. So what did I do to eventually pass? And what I did was pretty much force myself to go through Kaplan's book and practice test just section and section at a time until I really understood it. And that was working. I was doing that alongside going on YouTube and learning from instructors on there. And that's when I came across my secret to passing the Series 65 exam. When I was scrolling through YouTube trying to find an explanation from something I was learning from part 1, I came across a video posted by Susie Rhodes. Susie Rhodes is the founder and head tutor of Passmasters, and she is an absolute wizard. She was able to break down such a broad test and make it actually feasible. She takes it one section at a time and breaks the concept down in layman's terms, and then essentially creates this path of making all the concepts just connect. You're given PDFs filled with key points, videos explaining what you're reading, and then test questions to make sure that you've actually learned it. And by the way, guys, it was less than 10% of the cost of what I paid with Varsity Tutors my first time around. Now, no, I am not being paid. I have no incentive to doing this. I didn't get Passmasters for free. I just really had a great overall experience, and I figured this is my way of, one, repaying the favor to Susie Rhodes, and two, hopefully helping one of you find Passmasters and help you pass your Series 65 exam. I really mean it when I say my experience with Passmasters was a 12 out of 10. And I mean, as if the course wasn't enough, I had access to emailing Susie as I went through the course. No matter what questions I had, she was able to help me understand, whether it was simply breaking down a definition or by giving me a real-world explanation that would make sense to me. And what made it all better is you could just really tell that she loved what she's doing and she loves to help. So yeah, Past Masters and Kaplan practice test questions. That's really my secret to passing the Series 65 exam. But don't think it's gonna come without time and effort and actual dedication to studying. I mean it, guys. You're gonna need to lock in, put in hours of effort, and actually truly grasp the content that you're gonna be tested on. Well, guys, that's my breakdown to the Series 65 exam. I hope this is able to help one of you maybe potentially pass your test, or at least give you guys an idea of what the Series 65 exam is. Again, this is what worked for me. I'm not sure if it's gonna work for you. Nothing's guaranteed. This is just my opinion, and I figured that I'd put it out there and hopefully maybe help someone going into the future. And I mean, if you plan to take the Series 65 in the near future and you have any questions for me, please don't be shy to comment below. I'll be happy to do my best to answer and help you along your way. And really, if you do plan to take the exam, well, good luck, and I really hope that this helps. And always remember, the time is now.